OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're gonna go over a fun little adaptation of a very well-loved pattern on this channel. Today, we're gonna make a snap tab snack bag. So this is an alteration of one of my most popular videos, which is the two-tone snack bag. I see you guys making them every single day. I absolutely love it. A lot of you guys are also selling them. You're making them for gifts for everybody. That brings me so much joy to see you guys love something that I love so much as well. So, if you've been following me on social media, you might have noticed we've been playing with these snap tabs. So these snap tabs are embroidery files. You can find them all over the place. Creations by Connie has probably the most diverse selection of them. So pretty much any kind of snap tab you would want, she probably has a digital file for it. So you do need an embroidery machine to make these, or you can find people who sell them on Shop OklaRoots. We do occasionally sell these snap tabs. Actually, the snap tabs that I'll be showing you on all of the bags I've made so far are all like the rejects. They're ones that had a little problems, so I'm just using those to test out the pattern. But it's such a cool, fun way to incorporate a really fun little accent piece with a really fun pattern that we already know and love. So let's walk through this bag. First of all, this is a key fob. We've already gone over a tutorial on how to make this. I showed this in the video. So I just have a key fob stuck to a D-ring over here on this bag. That's one of the big differences between this and the snack bag. Now, honestly, there's a lot of big differences between this and the two-tone snack bag. The measurements are different. The construction is fairly similar with a couple extras, so I will have all of the measurements down in the description of this. I will also have a blog post on my website where I kind of go over it a little bit more. Maybe there'll be a printable over there, pretty much just with the measurements. You're gonna have to watch the video though to really figure out all the construction, but it's one of those bags that once you make it once, you kind of have it down. You can just make it again without having to watch the instructional every single time. Okay, so obviously, one of the coolest things about this bag is that we got a little snap here. Now, I am using a plastic cam snap, and you open it up, and on the front here, we have a little slip pocket. So this is just a simple slip pocket. On the back, we still have the two-tone, but now we're kind of raising it up. Instead of like a middle two-tone, we're raising up the vinyl a little bit higher. And this is also where the back of the snap tab is going to be sewn in. Other than that, it's the same. So on top here, we still have our zipper with our zipper tabs. Inside, I'm still using pull lining. If you're not gonna use this as a snack bag, you don't need any sort of food safe lining in there. You can just use quilt cotton. So I wanna talk about placement of this snap. So the lower down you place the snap, the more you're gonna get like a scrunched look on top. For example, here's another one I made, and I made the snap a bit higher. And you can see we don't have any of this top zipper scrunching down at all. Now, lots of different options here. You can use vinyl for the bottom and the pocket, which is what I've done on most of these. This one here though, this bottom fabric here, it's just canvas. It's just a cotton canvas material. It doesn't even have interfacing on it. And then the rest of it is quilt cotton with the pull material for the lining. Anywhere you're using quilt cotton, I would interface with your woven interfacing of choice. So for me, I'll be using the SF101 from Pellon. However, this doesn't have to be really thick. So for example, this is a thick vinyl. Let me show you this one over here. This one is a very thick vinyl, very, very thick. I mean, you can see those seams are screaming just a little bit, but it still worked. But I wouldn't suggest this if you're a beginner sewer. It looks cool, it has really good structure and shape, but it's going to be harder to do because you are going to have multiple layers. You're gonna have the vinyl, the lining, and then the backing. You're gonna have multiple layers you're gonna have to sew together here. So if you're doing it for the first time, I suggest keeping your material light, maybe just quilt cotton, maybe some little bit of cotton canvas, and then once you're ready, move up to the vinyls. You can see on this one here, I have a little ghosty, and then I have this amazing vinyl that changes colors in the light. I mean, when I'm looking at it right now, it really just looks black, but in the screen, I know you guys can see all the rainbows. So I'll show you one more that I made. This is another one, and this is a cool idea that I like. This is also a thicker-ish vinyl. This is more like a medium weight vinyl. This was not a difficult one to make at all. But you can see on the D-ring here, I attached a little sanitizer holder. So that's what I was kind of thinking with this. I was like, okay, this is a snack bag. with a D-ring, so we can put a wristlet on it, we can put a key fob on it, but we can also attach like a sanitizer holder for it. So if you're going to lunch, if the kiddos are going to lunch, they have everything they need right here. I think these would also be great for work bags, work lunch bags, travel. I mean, I don't know. We all are making these snack bags left and right, so we use them everywhere. I know in my house, we go through, I want to say we go through 12 to 20 snack bags a week, guys. Yeah, I know. It's a lot. So I will go through constructing this entire snack bag with you today. I will give you measurements for everything. If you don't have an embroidered snap tab, you can leave off the snap tab completely. You don't need it. You can just forget about it. Just have a little slip pocket here. That's fine. Or you can kind of make your own out of some vinyl. So I will give you the measurements for this tab if you're interested in just making it out of vinyl and not having the embroidered feature, which you don't need, but it is really cute. I mean, that's really cute. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all you want to say, leave them down in the comment section. As always, there will be timestamps for every single step of this tutorial, so you can just look down at the bottom of the screen and you'll find all of them right there, or you can expand the description and then they will be listed there as well. All right, let's get started making the most adorable little snack bags. Okay, so you're gonna hear me give you a lot of options on every step because there's really no one size fits all for this pattern. You can use a lot of different things. But in today's tutorial, for the exterior vinyl bottom in the back, I'm gonna be using this more of a lightweight vinyl. You can see it's very easy to fold and roll. It's not really thick. This is a great vinyl if you're not used to working with vinyl or if you're not quite sure how your machine's gonna do, because we are going to be layering this up. You don't want to start with a really thick vinyl if you're not used to that. For the main exterior fabric, which is going to be seen on the top parts, I'm using this fun cotton woven. And then for the lining, I'm using pull fabric. You're going to want about a fat quarter of each of these for one snack bag. Now, if you don't want to use vinyl, you don't have to. You can use quill cotton, you can use cotton canvas, you can use whatever you want here for the vinyl portion. I like vinyl because I feel like it withstands a beating better, especially if it's gonna be in like a kid's lunchbox and they're gonna have it on that kind of grimy, lunch table in the cafeteria. This you can take a disinfectant wipe and just wipe it down and it's easy to keep clean. I really like the cotton woven for the exterior portion. One thing to remember is that we will be layering this up. So you can see on this bag, we're going to have a slip pocket, layer of vinyl, and then we're gonna have a lining, layer of quill cotton, and then we're gonna have the main panel, layer of quill cotton, and then we're gonna have the back panel, layer of vinyl. So right around here, and then also on these little box corners, it's going to get thick. So the thinner the material, the better when you're just starting out. If you're using cotton woven, I do suggest you interface it with some SF101 or woven interfacing. This is going to prevent the material from fraying and it's going to prevent it from stretching. If you don't interface it, you might run into some problems that are going to be kind of a headache because it's going to stretch out and nothing's going to match up the way you want it to. This just keeps the material still lightweight and thin, but it allows it to work a little easier. All right, so here's a bunch of the other stuff. I will be installing a plastic snap today. Now this is cam snaps. These are just fun little decorative plastic snaps. And to install it, I will be using the handheld press. So I want to show you this snap here is a plastic snap. Take it off, pops off, very easy. Easy to use, inexpensive. You don't need a whole lot. You just need a way to press it down and you just need some plastic snaps. You can also use magnetic snaps that are rivet backed, and then you're going to need the appropriate die set to go with this. I use this a lot for items that I sell in the shop, and I want to show you what that looks like. So here's one where I use the magnetic snap. You can see it looks like a rivet. Isn't that cool? It just looks like a rivet, but it's a very easy to open magnetic snap. And the nice thing about this too is that this backing here is so smooth, so on the inside, on the other side of this vinyl, I don't have to worry about it rubbing against the material on the back and eventually causing a hole or anything like that. So if you have a rivet press, I do suggest these dies. I think this is a really cool setup. Next up is the snap tab. Now, a few of us have embroidery machines and we've been making these and they're so fun and we've been trying to find more projects to use them on because there's so many options and they're adorable, which is kind of why I came up with this pattern, because I just wanted to use these in more ways that were quick. So this is a vinyl embroidered snap tab. You don't have to use this. You can make your own. You just want to make sure your vinyl is 1 inch wide by 6 inches long. So really what you could do is just take 2 pieces of vinyl or pieces of cork, or even vinyl with felt is great too. And then just cut a rectangle that's 1 inch wide by 6 inches long, and then sew it together, right? So right sides out. And then like this here has raw edges, which I'm fine with. So there's a lot of different ways you could do that. You could make this out of cloth. I'm not gonna show you how to do it today. I am gonna show you using a pre-made one. But just remember, 1 inch by 6 inch is the desired end goal for one of these snap tabs. After that is our zipper. We're gonna be using a 7.5 inch long zipper, just like we do in the original pattern. I have a pen for marking on material that will not be seen in the end. And then I have my stiletto and seam ripper combo, and I will be using the stiletto here to poke a hole to install those plastic snaps. And as always, lots of clips. I forgot to tell you the needle and thread. So for the thread, I'm using a Tex 35 weight for the top thread. I like this because it's very, very hard to break. It's a very firm thread, which makes me feel more comfortable knowing that the projects are gonna last a little bit better. And then for the bobbin thread, I have just a Gutermann thread. Now, I highly suggest for bags use polyester thread. In my experience, polyester thread is harder to break than cotton thread. I've had a lot of trouble with cotton thread. I suggest polyester thread. And then the needle I'll be using is a Schmetz Microtex needle, and it's in size 80-12. If you're using a thicker vinyl, you're gonna wanna up it to a 90-14, but an 80-12 should work fine if you're using medium weight material here. So here are all the fabric cuts we'll be using today, so let's walk through them. First, we have that front slip pocket. I'm gonna have a cut of vinyl and also a cut of quilt cotton. My quilt cotton is interfaced with SF101. Each of these cuts is 8.5 inches wide by 4 3/4 inch tall. When these cuts are put together, they will overlay the front panel. So this front panel is 8.5 inches wide by 6 inches tall. And you can see I also have one of my labels over here, which I will be applying to the back of the bag. For the back of the bag, we have a cut of vinyl. This vinyl is the same cut as the slip pocket, so 8.5 inches wide by 4 3/4 inch tall. And then we just have that little accent strip that's gonna be on the top. This is 8.5 inches wide by 2 inches tall. For my zipper tab cut, I have a cut of quilt cotton here, which is 4 inches by 2 inches, and it is not interfaced. This is the only piece of quilt cotton that I'll be showing you that does not have interfacing. I find it doesn't need it on a zipper. Then I have a little D-ring scrap cut. Now this is a piece of vinyl. It's 2 inches long by 1/2 inch wide. And then to go with that, I have a D-ring. This is just a 1/2 inch D-ring. Now you don't have to use a D-ring. You don't have to use any of this at all, honestly, if you don't think you're gonna use it. But if you did want to add a tab, you want it to be about 1/2 inch wide. It doesn't really need to be bigger than that. And then you can use a keychain here. You can use a D-ring, an O-ring. You can pretty much use whatever hardware you have, or don't even add hardware at all to it, and then you can add something later if you want. And then for the lining, I have 2 cuts of my pull fabric, and these are both 8.5 inches wide by 6 inches tall. So let's start with our slip pocket. So my exterior part of my slip pocket is gonna be this vinyl. The lining part's gonna be this fabric. I know this fabric is so cool and it should be on the outside. I know, we'll talk about that in the future. But what we wanna do is just take our 2 pieces for the slip pocket and lay them right sides together. Make sure if you have a directional print, they're both directional print. Up, side, top is on the top. You know what I mean. Don't let this be upside down. And then we'll just clip along this top edge here. And now we'll go sew along that clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so once you have these 2 pieces sewn together, we're going to press them wrong sides together. So if you have an iron here, you can use an iron to press these. Otherwise, you can just finger press. So you can see I'm just kind of pushing down the vinyl first, and I'll flip this over. And what I like to do is line up these bottom edges. So I start with the bottom corners and clip those together. Remember, both of my materials are wrong sides together. And then I'll just kind of push and roll this top edge. Like I said, if you have quilt cotton and cotton canvas, any material here where you can use an iron, go ahead and do that. It's gonna be easier. You just want to get this as straight as possible. All right, once you have this top edge nice and straight and flat, we're gonna just top stitch along that folded edge at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so there is our front slip pocket. So now if you're gonna add a snap, now's the time to do it. So you can add the snap anywhere between 2 inches down and about 1 1/4 inch down. So you can see on my little pumpkin over here, I added the snap, the placement for the female end of the snap, I added that 2 inches down. And you can see by doing that, it kind of smushes down the zipper. Now this might be a look you really like, right? That's a cool like smushed look. However, if you don't like that look, that's perfectly fine. You can just install it higher up. So on this one here, I installed the female snap 1 1/4 inch down from this top folded edge. And you can see by doing that, I don't have any squish at all. It is nice and straight. The snap is still really cute. It looks nice. You can even kind of hold it by that, but it doesn't have any smush. So get creative with this. Anywhere between those numbers, you decide. So the first thing you want to do is find the midpoint along the top folded edge. So that should be 4 1/4 inches in. And I am just going to use my vinyl marking pen. Now this is a marking pen specifically for vinyl, which means I can wipe it off. It's not going to stay on there. But I just make a very small little mark just so I know where the midpoint is. And then I'm going to go 1 1/2 inches down. Why not? So I lined up on that midpoint, 1 1/2 inches down, and I'm going to mark a dot. All right, and this dot is where I want to install the female end of my plastic snap. So here are the tools I'm going to use for that. So I need to pick out a snap, which is one of the funnest parts. Let's see, I'm using this little Castle snap tab that's kind of purple. So I think I'm actually going to go with white. And these all have different shapes. So I'm going to go with a white star. Look how cool that is. This is going to be, the star will be applied to the snap tab with the male end of the plastic snap. And then the female end will be installed on the slip pocket with just a regular round backing because it's not going to be seen. So why waste a fun one? Okay, so while we're here, we'll just install both of them because it doesn't matter when we install that one. So to start with the slip pocket, I'm going to separate the lining from the exterior here. And I'm going to use my stiletto or an awl. If you have an awl, a lot of times they come with kits for the plastic snaps, use that. But I have a stiletto which works the same way. So I just find my mark, put my stiletto on there, and just kind of gently pull up the material. There we go. I just need a hole. I don't need a big hole. I don't need like a hole punch here. I need a small hole. So then I'm going to take my backing piece, which is just this little circle, and I'm going to push that through the back of the vinyl. So the pokey part comes out the front, and then I'm going to take the female part of my plastic snap and just lay it over there. So now with this handheld cam snap press, the circle part or the star part, whichever part is the non-functional part, more the decorative part, that's going to go on the bottom, and then this other part goes on the top. So all I have to do is smush this in here. This is where if you have really thick vinyl, it's a little tricky because you do have to kind of smush it in. Make sure your lining piece is not getting in there. And then you can just push down. And there we go. It sets it perfectly. This is a really good tool. This is better than some of the other handheld ones I've seen online and that I've purchased. This one, they actually stay. So I'll have a link for all this down below. So now let's install it on the snap tab. Now the snap tab is a little bit thicker because it's 2 pieces of vinyl. Do your best to find the center. I never do. I'm always a little off center, but that's fine. So I'm going to take my stiletto and I'm just going to push it, and then I kind of pull the material up. You don't want to get your fingers underneath here and then accidentally push this stiletto or awl through your finger because it will. It'll go right through your finger. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Okay, once I have a hole there, now I'm going to take my decorative part of my snap. So maybe it's just a circle. Maybe it's a fun shape like a star. And I'm going to push that through that hole just like that. Look how cool that is. Isn't that fun? That's fun. And then on the back of my snap tab, that's where I'm going to install the male end of my snap. So I'm just going to push that over, just kind of finger press it down. And then just like before, the star side is going to go down. And then the male end is up, and I'll just push it down. And there we go. Now we have it both installed. This is how it's going to look. How cute is that? I love that. So you can go ahead and put your snap tab to the side. All right, so now we have our slip pocket, and then we're gonna take our exterior main front panel, and we're just gonna line up our slip pocket on the bottom edge, lining up the two sides and the bottom, just like this. This is how it's gonna be in the end, a cute little slip pocket. Who doesn't love a slip pocket? We all do. So do your best to get everything lined up, and then just use some clips and clip these together. Your vinyl and your exterior main panel should both be right side up. And now let's just baste these three edges together at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, there we go. Now this is all prepped and ready to go. I know it's simple, it's just a slip pocket, but you know, it makes me happy. It's a really cute thing. And when you can start to see now, this is starting to get thick, right? I mean, we've got 3 layers of material here. You wanna keep it thin. Keep it thin while you're trying it out. And then you know what, go nuts. Put the thickest stuff you got there. Okay, so now let's work on the back panel. So for the back panel, you're gonna wanna take your bottom vinyl piece, and if you have a direction here, we're gonna be looking at the top edge of this vinyl piece, and we're gonna wanna mark the midpoint on there. So for me, I'm just gonna fold this in half, short sides together, and then just give a little pinch right there at the top. You can grab some scissors and just make the tiniest little cut, little tiny triangle. There we go. Now I have a little mark where the midpoint is. So now I'm gonna take my snap tab and I'm going to lay it right side down. So your vinyl or your bottom piece is right side up. Your snap tab is gonna be right side down because eventually when we sew this together, we want this to go like this and wrap around, right? So this is gonna go right side down and you're just gonna center it on that midpoint. And I just line up the edge. You can have it overlap a little bit if you'd like. You can have, you know, the edge of your snap tab piece overlap about 1/4 of an inch. I found lining it up has been fine. So what I do is I clip it along that top edge first, and then I'm gonna line up my piece with the grid marks on my cutting mat here. And I just wanna make sure this isn't like whoop, going to the side. I wanna make sure this is as straight as possible. So the midpoint right here is at 4 1/4. So if I count down here, 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4, the tip of my tab should be right there. And then what I do is I take some clips and I clip it to the bottom as well. Don't stress too much about this. You don't want to sew it on at an angle unless you do. That could be cool too. All right, so let's just go baste this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So once you have that basted down to the bottom panel, go ahead and take your top panel. And again, think about direction here. Everything, the top of each fabric piece should be on the top. And we're gonna lay these right sides together. So I like to just line it up how I want it in the end, and then I'll just whoop, flip it down. Let's go ahead and clip along this top edge here. So now we're gonna sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Yes, sewing over the end of this tab is a little bulky, especially if you're using a lot of thin material here. The tabs we make in the shop, these are all vinyl, so it is going to be a little bit thicker, but your machine should be fine. So once you have this sewn together, let's remove these bottom clips. And now what we want to do is we want all the seams to go behind the bottom panel. So you can start by just lifting your tab and everything's going behind this bottom panel. This tab should not be folding in any way down here. That seam is just gonna whoop, go right down underneath the bottom back panel. There we go. And this is where having a thinner vinyl is really helpful here. If you're using any sort of material like quilt cotton or cotton woven, you can press this with an iron. Just make sure you don't get that iron on a vinyl if you have a vinyl tab. So once you have that nice and flat, now we're gonna top stitch along this edge on the bottom panel at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you'd like, you can do another row at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance just to really hold it all together. But just 1/8 of an inch works as well. All right, there we go. There is your back panel. How cute is that? So let's just get a little preview here. Let's take our front and back panels and just fold this down. Oh yeah, that's cute. Isn't that cute? I like that. Okay, before we move on, I'm going to attach my bag tag. I actually like my bag tag on the back on this project, and I put it right underneath the bottom of my snap tab. So I just kind of feel for it, and I use that snap tab to help me center this. Now, I have to use double-sided tape here or else this will end up like that. It will be crooked. It doesn't matter how much I try to eyeball it, it will be crooked. So I'm gonna use some tape and then, yeah, just using that tab, that'll help me center it, keep it straight. All right, so I'm just gonna top stitch this on at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so that's top stitched on, and with my tabs lately, I have not been back stitching, but instead I've been pulling all of the threads. So I leave the tails long for the top thread and the bobbin thread. This might mean you don't use an automatic cutter on your machine in order to leave those bobbin thread tails long. But then I just pull all the tails to the back of the material. So I have 4 tails here, 2 top threads, 2 bobbin threads, and then I just tie them in like a triple knot. And since this isn't going to be seen, it can be really messy. There we go. And then I'll just trim those threads. And there we go. Now our tag is installed and the back panel is good to go for now. So let's put this to the side. Next up, let's prep our zipper. So here's my zipper tape. Once again, it's 7.5 inches long. And then I have my zipper tab here, which is just honestly a scrap piece of fabric. And it is 4 inches by 2 inches. What you want to do is find the midpoint of this and then fold the long edges in, wrong sides together to meet that midpoint, and then fold the whole zipper tab in half like a hot dog. And now you see you don't have any raw edges on the long sides. We have them on the short sides, we don't care. So once you have that folded, I like to add clips just to keep it together. If you iron this, that will also help keep the fold. There we go. So now we're just going to insert the ends of our zipper tape into this. So remove a clip, take the end of your zipper tape and just slide it into that hot dog bun. Make sure it's straight, not crooked. Once you have it in there, take your clips and clip this in place so it doesn't move around on you. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other end. Now I just pull this up and put it in just like that. So I'll remove that clip, slide it into the hot dog bun, and then use clips to hold it in place. And there you go. So now I'm going to top stitch along the bottom edge here, closest to the zipper, at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to hold the zipper tab in place. So once that's all sewn on, now all I'm gonna do is cut right along the edge of the zipper tape. So I'm not cutting the zipper tape, I'm only cutting the zipper tab, but I just line my scissors up with the edge of the zipper tape and just trim the zipper tab down so it's the same width as my zipper tape. And that's just a really nice little finish on the edge of our zipper. And I find with these zipper ends, you don't have to use the same fabric. If you have just some random scraps of fabric, use that. This is a great way to kind of eat up scraps. So now that our zipper is prepped, we want to find the midpoint along both edges of our zipper tape. So all you have to do is just fold it together like that. You can grab a marking tool or you can cut this little corner with your scissors. Just don't cut too far. And just make sure you mark the midpoint on both edges of your zipper. Now grab your front and back panels and we want to do the same thing. We want to mark the midpoint along the top edge of each of these panels. So you can just fold it in half. And you'll notice now we're going to construct this bag just like we do with the other snack bags. I have 2 other snack bag tutorials. This is all the exact same now. This is even the same size. Your finished size right here of your panel should be 8.5 inches by 6 inches. We're just putting it together just like we've done before. So I am going to use scissors to just clip along that corner right there on both of these. All right, so I'm going to start with the front panel. So taking my front panel and laying it right side up, I'm going to take my zipper, and I like my zipper to be closed on the left. So when I close my zipper, it's going to be all the way to the left, and I'm going to lay my zipper right side down on my front panel, and I'm going to match up those midpoint marks. So those midpoint marks are the first things you clip together, and then you can clip out the rest of the zipper. There you go, it might be easier to see this way. So you see, I always start with the midpoint, and then I clip out towards the sides. If you want to use double-sided tape here, this is a great time to do that. I know my mom likes to use that on the snack bag. She finds it very helpful. So now I'm going to baste this zipper down to the front panel, and I'm going to do that at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have these sewn together, I like to take my zipper and just kind of move it into the middle. And now we're going to grab our lining panels. So I'm going to take my lining and I'm going to lay it right side down. Now let's just talk about pull for one moment. This is pull material. This is food safe pull. And we have gone back and forth on my channel about what is the right side. Is it the kind of shiny plasticky side or is it the fabric side? Which side is the right side? To be honest, I have reached out to pull companies. Both sides are the right size depending on what you're doing with it. So this is obviously like a more nice fabric side and it feels nice. You can use that as the right side. However, if it's food safe pull, this plasticky side here, that's the side that has been tested for high heat and it was less likely to stain with liquid. So if you're making a bag to put some hot soup in, you're gonna want this to be your right side. If your snack bag is personal and you know you're only gonna be putting pretzels and chips and dry goods in it, either side will work. So for our family, we use the fabric side as the right side, but when we make these to sell in our shop, we always use the plastic side as the right side. So there you go. Both sides are safe, but the shiny side is tested for heat with food, and it's less likely to stain. It's going to be a little bit easier to clean. So I'm going to lay shiny side down. That's going to be my right side. And I'm just going to line it up along the top edge of my zipper and just clip it in place. Okay, now I'm going to sew along this edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you're using a skinnier zipper, maybe you're using a number 3 zipper, then you can probably do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I will be sewing at a 3/8 inch seam allowance across the entire edge. All right, once these are sewn together, let's flip them so that they are wrong sides together. So just like I did with the slip pocket, I like to line up the bottom corners first and then just clip those together. And just clip along this bottom edge. And now what I can do is I can just kind of tug on my zipper to help get a nice straight edge up here. And you can take this to the iron and flatten this out. That's going to be really helpful. Just make sure if you have vinyl, don't let that iron touch it. Cover it up with something. There we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch along this top edge over here right next to the zipper. But don't top stitch all the way to the edge. So just start right where your zipper tab is, do a couple stitches, back stitch, and then go along and then back stitch at the end over here as well. You do want to back stitch here, but don't go all the way off the side. So now we have the zipper attached to the front panel. We're just going to repeat that process to attach it to the back panel. So let's start with our back exterior panel. And this time though, you do have this guy here who's hanging out. So you might want to just clip him out of the way, but he's going to pull this back a lot. So we're going to have to do a few checks here, okay? So lay your zipper tape right side up and then take your back panel and lay that right side down. And let's match up those midpoints first. Use a clip to hold it in place. And then line up the zipper with the top edge of your back panel. Remember, your zipper tape is shorter than the top edge of your exterior panels. It's supposed to be. There we go. Just add clips along the entire edge to hold it in place. All right, now I know with this tab here, it's kind of hard to get it all flat, but you're only worried about this section right here. Don't worry about the rest of it. So now let's just baste this zipper in place to that back panel at an 1/8 inch seam allowance. So now with the zipper wrong side up, take your remaining lining panel and lay it right side down. We've already talked about the pull. You decide which side is right. And we're going to line it with that raw edge of that zipper tape and just clip it together. All right, now we're going to sew along this clipped edge at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, now let's flip our lining and exterior panels wrong sides together. And I'm just once again going to line them up on their bottom corners, and that's going to help me straighten out by the zipper. So when I flip this over and then I close my zipper tape, I can kind of pull on this, and that will help me get a nice flat edge here. Now you can definitely go to your iron, press this down. It's going to really give you a clean edge. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch just on this edge of the zipper, and make sure you don't go all the way off the edge. Just top stitch where the zipper is and where the zipper tabs are. I do back stitch at the beginning and the end right at the edge of those zipper tabs. Alrighty, so now this should be very familiar to you if you've made the snack bags before. We're just going to kind of continue on, sew them together, box them up, be done. If you want to add a little tab over here to hold a D-ring or nothing, and then you can put a keychain on it later, now's the time to do it. You want to make sure your lining and your exterior are separated. I will be basting it onto the front panel, whichever panel works for you. Now you decide where you want this. You can put it up higher, and that way you don't have so many layers of vinyl to sew through. You can put it down lower. I wouldn't put it right at this edge because this edge right here is pretty thick and dense, and so you don't want to add more to that. It's already going to have this edge and this edge. So I'm actually just doing mine about 1/2 inch down from the top edge of my slip pocket. That's where I've been putting it. So let me make sure I don't forget my D-ring. I'm going to thread my D-ring on there. D-ring is pointed in towards the center of the bag. If you don't have a D-ring, just the fold is pointed in towards the center of the bag. And then I'm going to attach this to the edge. Now I do have it overhang about 1/4 of an inch, just because this is a little bit long and I don't like it that long. You guys play with this. So I'm gonna have my edge overhang 1/4 of an inch. And now I'm gonna go base this down at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Remember, we're not sewing through the lining, it's only the exterior front panel. So move that lining out of the way. Okay, and I know some of you guys are gonna ask, could I add 2 of these and make it like a really adorable little crossbody? Yes, you can, and if you do, please post a picture and you tag me in it on social media, okay? Because I wanna see that. It's small, but it would be adorable. All right, so now let's make sure our zipper is in the middle. And we're going to take our exterior panels and we're going to fold them right sides together. But you don't want this. You don't want this to slip out. So you're going to have to pay attention to that. If you want, you can fold this in, use a piece of tape and tape it in place. For me, I'm very aware of where this is and I make sure to move it as necessary. So I'm gonna take my exterior panels, fold them right sides together, line up the corners first. And you see right away it's coming through. So I'm just gonna push it down, kind of pushing it through the zipper a little bit so it's over on the lining side now. That's fine, as long as I'm not sewing over it. So I'm just gonna clip all of these edges together. If you'd like to keep it all cohesive, you can make sure that the vinyl panel top edge and then the top edge of the slip pocket line up. They're measured the same, they should be at the same place. If they're not, don't worry about it, it's gonna be cute. So I'm just doing the exterior first. And this is where you're gonna start to see how thick these seams are. If you use a thick vinyl here, this is gonna be a bugger, okay? So once we get to the seams between the exterior and the lining, what I've been doing lately is opening those seams. So if you can't open them, try to push them both towards the lining. Try to get all the seams towards the lining. But if you have enough room, try to press those seams open. So the exterior is going towards the exterior side, the lining's going towards the lining side. This is why we make that zipper smaller, so we have room over here. So just use a clip to hold it in place. Do this for both sides. All right, so once you have the seams clipped together, now let's just clip the lining sides, right sides together. All right, before we sew this together, let's mark an opening over here on the lining so that we can turn it out. So I'm gonna mark about a 3-inch opening. If you're using thicker material, go ahead and mark a 4-inch opening. Just make sure it's centered because we will be cutting these corners, so don't have it off to the side. Just make sure it's centered. 3 inches should be fine in most cases. So now we're gonna sew, starting at one edge, all the way around at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch well at the beginning and the end, so that's at both edges of these marks. If you don't sew in between them, this has to stay open. I will be using a zipper foot because that helps me get as close as possible to the zipper tab up here without going over it. Do not sew over your zipper tab. If that means you have to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance over here, then do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. The most important part of this is that you don't sew over those zipper tabs. The whole reason we have them is to give a nice clean corner up here. So go slow, zipper foot's helpful, 3/8 of an inch all around where you can. And then on the vinyl portions, you're gonna wanna do a second row of stitching just outside of that first row. So I'm gonna do this all at once at the machine. All right, there we go. So if you're using a thicker vinyl, you're gonna notice that that was a little challenging. I'll be honest, with this previous version here, when I went over the seams right here with the sewing machine, it was so thick that I was worried my needle would break, so I just hand cranked it instead of using the presser foot, which is always an option. If you have a section that you're just really nervous about, you can just hand crank the needle around, so that way, if it resists too much, you don't have to worry about the needle break. So now we're gonna box our corners. So we're gonna take the innermost stitching. So for example, this is my exterior panel here, I have 2 rows of stitching because I have vinyl. The innermost stitching, that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're going to line up our ruler so that the stitching is lined up with the 3/4 of an inch markings on the side and the bottom. So we're making a little square that's 3/4 of an inch from the side and also from the bottom. Not the raw edges, but from the stitching. So use the stitching as your guide here. Once you have it lined up, just grab some sort of marking tool and mark that rectangle. There we go. Do this for all 4 corners, so the 2 lining corners and the 2 exterior corners. Once you have those marked, grab some scissors and cut along those marked rectangles. So do your best to go slow here. Don't cut too far. You just need to go right to the corner. You're just going to cut off all 4 of the corners. Always make sure you're paying attention to where that snap tab is if you have one. So if it kind of slid over here, don't cut it. Make sure you can move it around. You can always reach in and move your zipper if you need to so that you have more control over where everything is. Okay, so now we're just going to box them. So pull apart your exterior. Now you might actually want to put your hand in through the lining, past the zipper, and then stick your finger out through that hole. Just so you know, because we have multiple layers here, right? We've got our back panel, we've got our pocket, we've got the pocket lining, we've got the front panel. So you don't want to accidentally box the wrong things. So you're going to have 1 layer of vinyl for your back panel, and then the other 3 layers are part of the front panel. So just make sure you push them like that. I like to pull further down here to get this straight. If you see that it's rounding a lot, it's because you need to pull further down, not just here. And then I actually press both seams to the back panel because the back panel only has 1 layer of material here and the front panel has multiple. So I find if you have material that's thin enough, press them all to the back panel or else it gets pretty bulky here on the front. Totally up to you. You can press them in opposite directions as well. That's fine. This is just what I found to be a little bit easier. So you can see I always clip further down, not just along the top edge, but further down to keep that straight. So I'm going to do this for the other one as well. Once again, pressing both my seams towards the back panel, which I know is crazy. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for the lining. Now for the lining, you can flip them in opposite directions since the material is the same on both sides. Flipping the seams in opposite directions just makes sure that they line up perfectly, and it gives you the best boxed bottom. However, if you find that putting 1 seam towards the front panel is just making it way too bulky, then don't do it. You'll be fine. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along all 4 clipped edges at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you're worried about this being a little too baggy inside, the lining part being a little too baggy, you can up it to a 1/2 inch seam allowance and that'll kind of tuck in the lining a little bit so that it's smaller than the exterior and you shouldn't have as much bagginess. So I'll go ahead and try that as well. I'll do a 1/2 inch on the lining and 3/8 inch on the exterior. But just note that on all the other bags, I did a 3/8 inch seam allowance on all 4 of them. Here's our little cutie patootie. You might have noticed that on the exterior corners, I did go over it twice. When I'm working with vinyl, I almost always go over the seam twice just to make sure I don't have any thread ripping. Vinyl can be so tough on thread, and I just, you work so hard. You want it to stay together. So before we flip this out, I am going to trim down the seam allowance on these box corners just in half. I'm just cutting it in half just to reduce the bulk. Make sure you don't cut your threads. I'm going to do the lining as well, especially since I did use that 1/2 inch seam allowance. All right, so now let's turn this right side out and see what it looks like. So, yay, my snap tab has not been sewn into anything. That's good. All right, so just put your hand inside the lining and poke out the exterior boxed bottoms. There we go, that's looking cute. Okay, and then you don't have to put your hand inside of the lining hole, but just inside the bag. Reach in and just pop out those zipper tabs. Remember I said don't sew over them? If you didn't sew over them, you should be able to pop these out. And you do it just from the inside of the bag, not inside the lining hole. There we go. That's the easiest way to do it. Oh yeah, this is looking so cute, isn't it? Oh my goodness. Okay, let's just give it a test run. I just want to see it. Zipped up. Snap tab down. Oh, look how cute you are. This is good. I think 1.5 inches is pretty perfect because you just have like a slight little dip in your zipper, but that looks really good. Okay, so last step is just closing up the lining hole. So pull out your lining, and then I just put my fingers inside the lining and kind of fold the raw edges down and give it a little tug. With the 3-inch opening, there's really not a whole lot there, so you can even kind of just like pinch the lining, and those raw edges will just naturally go down inside. So once you have that, just use some clips to hold these pieces together. And now let's take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch right along this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to close up that hole. All right, the hole is closed. Let's just tuck in that lining. And I do think that increasing the seam allowance on the lining box bottoms was really a good idea because this is not that baggy. This is perfect. So let's zip it up. If it's a little wrinkly, you can go ahead and give it a press. Just again, be careful with vinyl. And look how stinking cute that is. I love this. It's so cute. Alrighty, are you ready to see the newest little baby in my collection? How cute is this? I love snack bags. I love to use them. I love when kiddos are using them. I love when I see you guys posting about them on social. They're just like such a little like chubby happy little bag, you know, and they come together very quickly. Like I said, once you make 1 or 2 of these, you will just be able to fly through the steps. You won't have to kind of consult the videos so much. I will always have the measurements. They are free. They are down in the description of this video. You don't have to pay anything for them. They're on my website as well. Again, you don't have to pay anything for them. If you want to print them out over there, you can do that. So let's see. This is one, and this one has a lightweight vinyl, which I think is best. A lightweight vinyl, cotton woven, perfect. Here's another version. This is cotton canvas on the bottom instead of vinyl, but I do still have a vinyl snap tab, and then quilt cotton everywhere else. Here is another vinyl. This is a marine vinyl, so it's a little bit thicker than this rainbow vinyl, but not much. And you can see, I mean, look at the little butts here. Do you see that? So you see here on the thinner one, how it's nice and clean, and over here it's just a little bit poofier. Thicker the material, the more you're gonna get this. I've got to be honest, I do not want to make another one of these with this vinyl because it was very tough, but man, this one feels the best. I love it, and I just love my little ghosty. But you can see that little bottom box seam. I mean, it's screaming a little bit. You can see some of the stitches down there. And then finally, this little happy fall one. Like I said, add whatever you want to the side. Having a D-ring is nice. You can see on this one as well, my D-ring strap was sticking out a little bit farther than I wanted it to. So I added a rivet there just to tighten it up because I don't like my D-ring kind of going all over the place. So when in doubt, add a rivet. It'll tighten it up. Looks great. So thank you so much for sewing with me today. Oh, I hope you guys like this. I really, really do. Let me know if you make them. Let me know what kind of tabs you're using. Like I said, I will have measurements down below for the tabs, so if you just want to make your own, you don't want to use an embroidered one, that's totally fine. To be honest though, these bags were specifically designed with these tabs in mind. I was trying to find more ways to use these adorable embroidered tabs that we cannot stop making. So I hope you're having a great day. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye guys.